Welcome to another episode of Threads of Enlightenment. As usual, guys, you know this is one of my favorite space right here in the beginning. It gives me an opportunity to thank and give honor to the individual that is before us, and that is Tony. He's coming with a couple of things I deem very expensive. One, his time. 24 hours. What a beautiful gift has been given and afforded to every one of us. Same a lot of time. How you honor time, how you respect, how you love time, how you engage with her, the relationship you have with her will tell me much about you. The other is the journey. The journey is a powerful creator. It created Tony that is before us, and we want to stop, honor him for coming and sharing both of these precious commodities here with us so that we can learn from him, gain from his wisdom, insights, and knowledge so that we can become better human spirits while we occupy this beautiful place called Earth. Tony, thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment.
Thanks for having me, Ken. It's a pleasure to be here.
It is an honor, man. I always ask this on the onset, this question as to how do you serve mankind? Because again, I want the audience, the listeners, to be engaged, to understand that this is much bigger than just them. It's a question that we need to pose to ourselves and get out of our space and begin to dig deep. How do you serve mankind?
Well, I help individuals and groups find who they really are. Like undo that programming that we've been programmed for our whole lives from our parents, our teachers, our priests, pastors, schools. Everybody has been programming us to be what we like to call, like you were mentioning earlier, like to call normal, and what society considers normal. However, that's suppressing who we really are. So I really help people first find themselves, wake up, get out of their own heads, so to speak, and then put a plan together on achieving what they desire, whether it's a successful business, whether it's a better relationship. I basically help them create miracles in their lives. And when I say miracles, it's because I help them discover how they can make things happen that they never thought they could.
I love it. That is in a nutshell, if you will, the assignment of all of us who have walked through and come to the other side. And I always tell my listeners, hurry up to become a servant. It's a beautiful journey. It is painful, but at the end of it, it is worth it all. And so you guys are welcome, hurry up. And so one of the spaces that we like to do here at Threads of Enlightenment, Tony, you'd mentioned a lot of the things that you mentioned early on in your picture as to what you do is 100% belief of what I have. And one of the very first spaces that we visit and we began to be programmed is called this family. This family is, we have a couple of members in there, two individuals called mom and dad that are strangers to you. If you have brothers and sisters who are also strangers to you, and you have to get to know mom and dad. So we began to learn about relationships and how one can be traumatized from relationships. What was your family unit?
So my family unit was very, for lack of a better term, dysfunctional. When I was growing up, I grew up with parents who fought all the time. Father was an alcoholic. I've got four brothers. All of us went our own way, and it was very challenging growing up. There was a lot of negativity around us. A lot of never anything physical, but a lot of verbal abuse. A lot of negativity pounded into all of my brothers and I, and that we saw both our parents going through as they were feeding it to each other. And so it was really interesting because we tended to find our positive from the people around us that were still programming us, but in a different fashion. So we tended to migrate to our athletic coaches or to our teachers or to our church leaders, things like that, and less with our parents, which is kind of the opposite of what most people do. So it was really an interesting upbringing, and I found myself working from a very young age. I got my first paper out at 8 years old. I had two by the time I was 11. I was always trying to find the job that somebody would let me do at that young age. And then, of course, when I became a teenager, it was fast food. And then on from there, I didn't want to be at home in that environment if I didn't have to be.
Yeah, that's the genesis. I was going to ask you, what was it that propelled you? And you mentioned not being home wanting to be there. As this young man in this beautiful mixture of traumatizing behavior, verbal traumatizing stuff is just as damaging as any other. And I tell people trauma doesn't have to be this really intense thing, which a lot of people suffer from. Sometimes it is very small, benign little thing, but the interpretation of that little benign thing by that young individual is really, really traumatizing to them. And it helps them to form perceptions, if you will, out of relationships, and they begin to use those perceptions to build their life around. As this man, this young boy is in this mix, he has a mindset which I love. I can see it on from the onset, the entrepreneurial mind. That's a different mind than the normal behavior, Tony, that people have. So here you are as this young boy, if you will, and he acquires this entrepreneurial thinking. As you begin to work in your paper route and you begin to see the results of your entrepreneurship, what did it do to you as a young man seeing that again? And when you do that, you're stepping out of quote unquote normal at a young age. So how did you respond in that?
So it really taught me a work ethic. It really taught me that to really get what I wanted in life, I had to work hard at it. And there's differences in that. Now I'm learning a little bit differently about more of the mindset piece of it versus the hard work piece of it. However, back then I was learning the hard work piece of it. Although the other piece that really taught me was that I really did enjoy leading people. And even though I was not a direct boss to anybody, I enjoyed leading people and doing it in a positive manner versus the negativity I had been funneled through me for most of my youth. And I found that both, not so much the paper route, but when I got into working at a horse farm and working at the fast food places, and then throughout all of my athletics, I played baseball since I was young, and soccer and basketball and football, and every one of those organizations, I came out as kind of the leader. And sometimes I was the captain, sometimes I wasn't. However, it was still kind of a leadership role that I kind of took on. And I did so in a positive manner because I wanted to have a positive influence on people versus what I was used to at home. And so it really got me going down this path where now, fast forward, 25, 30 years, I've been leading people in a positive fashion for most of my life.
Wow. That is, I love that type of mindset, because mine, I think I had about 12, I was 8 and 9 when I used to run a farm by myself. I was outside of the box from jump goes. And some of the principles that you learn, we learn it backwards, as you said, which is not in a way backwards. I think the hard work piece, we have to learn that. Right. You have to learn that. And then later on in life, you learn how to adapt a skillful approach to that. You change it in different ways. So here you are, you're in this young man, you recognized a gift that is residing within you, that gift of leadership, that gift of entrepreneurial. I think sports and entrepreneur mindset sets us free from the normal programming, because I think it's in those spaces that we start to get insight into the mind and what the mind could accomplish, because you have to push your body beyond what it's comfortable. So here you are, you've already began to set your foundation, Tony, as far as who you are. You're heading towards the educational piece, where it's another entity that starts to program us. They have their own laws and bylaws. You're now in high school and stuff like that, and looking to college. Which college did you pick? Why did you pick? Why did you pick the field that you picked heading into that direction, now moving towards your independent, if you will?
So I actually did not go to college after high school. I allowed myself to get caught up in not necessarily the right group of people towards the end of my high school career. And so I went kind of a different direction. And at the time, unfortunately, I followed kind of my dad's footsteps and started drinking and doing drugs. Not really, I can't say bad drugs, but I mean, drugs are drugs. And so, so I started going that direction. So for the first few years from high school, I went and went right into the workforce. I worked into a steel foundry for a couple of years, which was hard work, and got my own apartment, got away from my parents, got my own apartment, and a roommate who kind of encouraged those negative behaviors. It wasn't until I actually met my current wife when I was 24 that I really started to turn things around. So I had about 6 years where I was doing the things that are considered not so good in adult life. So when I met my wife, she really gave me a reason to not be that person anymore. And that's where I really started my personal development. And even to this day, I don't have a college degree, I have gone back to school several times to take classes that I was interested in or that I knew I needed for to help me along the path I was on. And I never, regarding even those 6 years I'm maybe doing the best extracurricular activities, I never messed with my work. I was growing, I was getting promoted. Even at the time that I met my wife at 24, I had already been promoted twice at the company I was at, and on my way for more. However, especially after her and I got together, I always wanted more. I knew that even though I was being a leader in the manufacturing world and eventually the corporate world, I was doing it on somebody else's terms.
Yeah.
And I wasn't really serving people the way I knew I could. And so it was later on down that career path that I really decided to go out on my own as a coach, because I knew I could help people more on a face-to-face basis versus what an organization told me how I should do. Back to that program.
Yeah. I know one of my friends that told me, said, when he said it to me, Tony, it kind of ruined my life, because I was helping someone else's dream at that time. Yep. And he said to me, there are two types of people on this planet. He said, those that are working in someone else's dream and helping them fulfill their dream, and those who are fulfilling their own. And he said, when he said that, kind of messed me up for a long time, because I realized how right he was and how we are programmed to get up every morning and go into the system for someone else's dreams, and don't even take the time to investigate anything about my own. And probed me into started investigating and looking at other things that was inside me. Acres of diamonds, as they say, with that story where, you know, the diamond field within his own grasp. So here you are, but the onset of the entrance of your future wife came into your life, began to you. And I tell people, enjoy the disturbance. We look at it wrong, Tony. I think I tell people, enjoy that disturbance, because it's telling you that you're not where you ought to be. Right. And that's when you start looking in deeper to excavate, why is that there? So when you looked in, you talked about it's not where you want it to be. What did you see? And what direction you mentioned coaching, but what made you recognize that it was coaching when you looked in and you saw yourself and you now begin to move from fulfilling someone else's dream?
Great question. Great question. So I had been an on and off entrepreneur on the side for several years after my wife and I really got serious. And it wasn't until 2018 where I had taken a job. Both of us grew up in Washington State, and we lived just outside of Seattle area most of the years we've been together. And then in 2018, I accepted a role in Florida, and the company moved us across country. And I was thinking, cool, this is the next big thing. This is going to take me to the next level. Turned out it was the worst company I had ever worked for. It was, and not that the organization itself, but the leadership therein was just terrible. Yeah. And it was just a constant barrage of negative, poor leadership. So at the time, we had already talked when we moved to Florida that we were going to start some sort of business on the side. We didn't know what yet. And at the time, I was just miserable. For the first 6 months I was there, I was miserable. My wife was like, you got to do something. Something's got to change. This is not who you are and not who you've been for the last 15 years. So that was when I hired my first coach. I hired him based on a recommendation of somebody else. I got on a call with him, and I was like immediately drawn to this man. To this day, he's still a dear friend of mine, and I worked with him for 3 years. Yeah. He's the one who really helped me see things from the inside out, to really get rid of that programming. And after about 6 months of working with him, I was like, this is what I want to do. This is where my passion is. My passion is serving people like this, helping them get out of their own heads and into their beliefs and into being their real selves and who they want to be and truly want to be, not who somebody else is telling them they should be. And so it was at that point where I really, really got excited about coaching and helping people. And it's been a passion ever since. And I believe in it with all of my heart.
Yeah, I tell people, find your passion and be passionate about it. That's when you know that you found your assignment. The assignment, I tell people, will make you. It will strengthen you. It will encourage you. You will work 49 hours a day. You know, if we had such a thing, and you will still be strengthened. You'll be tired, but you still will be strengthened. You will have this grin on your face. People are going to look at you and they'll say, "Aren't you tired?" And you look at them. Well, not really, because it feeds you, it engages you, it empowers you. And at some point, I tell people, when you get into your quote unquote assignment, your gifts begin to use you. It's a really interesting phenomenon that takes place as you're there. So here you are, you looked within yourself, and you said you were guided by this individual. When you were looking in there, Tony, what did you discover that was in there from the program, or as the first set of programmers in your life? What belief systems did you discover when you started to excavate all of those things that they had deposited in you?
Well, the first thing that I discovered that I really worked on was that I had spent the majority of my life being a people pleaser, being a yes man, not taking what I thought or my beliefs seriously and worried too much about what other people believed. And what's interesting is once I started to make that change and make that decision that I was going to, first one, if before I respond to somebody, how am I serving them with this response? So if somebody comes to me and they're looking for me to say yes, I started thinking, okay, by my saying yes to them, am I serving them or am I worried about how they think about me? And so that was really the first action. And when I started saying no more, or not necessarily just flat out no, but redirecting if it wasn't something that I really should have been responsible for, or saying yes, things started actually looking way better. And not just as a coach, but also when I was still working in the corporate world. And I was like, wow, okay, I should have done this years ago. Now, granted, I can't change the past, only do what I can do today. And so the people pleaser part was the biggest thing. And the other part was that I really lacked the confidence, even though on the outside I exude confidence, on the inside I really lacked that. I really didn't think I was good. I had that imposter syndrome. Who am I to go off and serve this many people? And so those are the two biggest things I really had to address and really had to focus on for the first, well, still focus on, but really focus on when I first started making that change and really started developing myself. When I started gaining that true confidence and that belief in me and really started reducing, if not eliminating, the people pleaser in me, the whole world changed. I mean, I saw things and see things in a whole different light than I did before.
Yeah, you become aware of time. You become aware of how much time you wasted trying to please people. And usually I was one of those, and you learn that you really can't please them because they are never pleased, even though you do whatever you think you did to please them. Somehow they're never pleased. And you find yourself being traumatized from that as well. And then what starts to happen, as you said, the imposter syndrome begins to be a part. So this whole crescendo of internal dialogue starts to happen to you as you're trying to please people, until you start to get the revelation that, wait a minute, I think I need to please me first and find out one of the most important things, guys, that are listening to this. You have to learn boundaries. What he was talking about, what Tony was talking about, was boundaries. The boundaries, when he began to recognize that he needed to set up boundaries, his language became different. I can't do this. This is the reason why. He said his those were setting boundaries. And as you set boundaries, you're actually reclaiming your time. So
Yeah.
here you are, Tony. You looked in, you saw those two major ones, and we will always, when we find them, Tony, I think it's still a part of us. We discovered it. We know how to manage it better, but it always comes back. We have seasons, and so we have to. When it comes back, we're like, I recognize you, man, and we just don't stay in that space as long as we did back in the day. We know how to handle it. So we'll always find that. As you discovered those things and you began, what tools, Tony, did you bring in once you discovered that? What did you bring in to help you to navigate from discovering these things about you, to assist you to move forward so that you can walk into that space of becoming a coach, a guide, if you will?
Right. Right. Well, the first thing that I really, it took time, of course, to get to where I'm at now. But the first thing I really started with was, and I recommend anybody, is starting a positive morning routine. Start your day off right. I like to say, hey, we're humans. Welcome to planet Earth. It's okay to wake up on the wrong side of the bed. It's your choice whether you choose to stay there or not.
Yeah.
So my morning routine, and the one that really helped me was starting with some breathing exercises and meditation. It can be prayer / meditation, depending on your belief system. But the breathing exercises really help you clear your head of all the stuff that your brain's trying to tell you first thing in the morning. So the way my morning routine goes is I get up. First thing I do is I say my declarations to myself, which are I am statements talking about the person who I'm being or who I am aspiring to be. And I say those first thing in the mirror, speaking them to myself. And then I meditate. I breathe and meditate for at least 10 minutes. I try to go as high as 30, but it depends on what my morning looks like. 10 minutes minimum. First 5 is breathing. Second 5 is straight meditation, or depending on what length of time I have. And then I always read something inspirational or positive, whether it's a book, a magazine, something that I know is going to inspire me or motivate me. And I do that for 25 minutes. And then I journal to brain dump anything else that's left. I journal and write just everything out. And then some light exercise. And I say super light, like walking around the block or doing some jumping jacks, something just to get the blood flowing, not to really get you sweating or burning a bunch of calories, but just to get that blood flowing to help that positive mental attitude. So if throughout that whole morning routine, I usually come out with so much energy, so much positivity that it would take a lot to take that out of me throughout the day. So it really is, from everybody I've worked with and everybody I've talked to, developing a positive morning routine really helps keep your day going in a positive direction.
Yeah, what you're doing, Tony, we recognize later in hindsight, as they say, because mine was meditation. Tony mentioned some really powerful tools there. Meditation, which is one of them. You have your confession, which is another thing. Journaling, which is another tool. So many tools he mentioned there. The exercising, all of those things. What was Tony doing? Tony was reprogramming himself. We are responsible to reprogram ourselves for all of those beliefs that were deposited in there, whether it's mom, dad, pastor, it doesn't matter. But we hold some degree of responsibility in the sense to begin to rewire our brain. Meditation is great. Journaling is another. Your declarations are another, because you have to now listen. You have to, the first couple of times when you stand in front of that mirror, you're going to laugh at yourself. We all did it. And then one day, you will look at that mirror and you're going to see you. And what you say is going to be who you are. And so you keep saying it. But I promise you, one day it'll be different. And what it takes is time. This goes into months, some of us years, because some of us are stubborn. We go back and forward, but you keep moving, man. And one day it'll be different. So here you are, Tony. You began to utilize these tools to get you, start you on your journey, if you will. What type of, because I know you're now going to have to make some internal decisions, because I told people once we make those internal decisions, it will propel us to create a plan to accomplish what we just decided. What was that decision or several decisions that you made when you began to uncover all these things, Tony, that began to now propel you heading towards being a coach? What was that thing that says, okay, showtime?
That is a great question. I guess the real decision was I had seen that I wasn't being the person that I really wanted to be. And so I
Yeah.
made the choice that I wasn't going to be that person. I was going to be the person that I was meant to be, that I was
Yeah.
put here to be, and serve people the way I should. And so the first choice was, hey, I say this to my clients all the time. I said, if you can't look yourself in the mirror and truly say I love you and mean it, then it's time to make a change. And so
Yeah.
it was one of my coaches at the time who said that to me. He said, hey, can you look in the mirror and truly say I love you and mean it about everything about you? And I said, no. Great. Now we have a starting point. Now
Yeah.
make the choice to make the changes that will allow you to do that. So where now I can look in the mirror and say I love you and mean it, whereas I couldn't before. So I made that change. I made that choice. That was the biggest choice. The choice was I looked in the mirror and saw somebody who I wasn't being who I wanted to be.
Yeah.
And made that choice, made that decision that I was going to become that person.
Yeah, I think, Tony, that is the most important choice because everything hinges on that space right there. We have to learn more about us in order for us to learn about people because, as I said in the onset, we are human. And so as we study and look at our behavior, and that journey to love the self is one of the most painful journey that you will ever encounter in your life because you have to face you, all the lies, and you can't lie to yourself. You got to look in that mirror. It requires a degree of honesty that will make you or break you.
Yeah.
And that is the most important journey. And as Tony stated, that little thing where you look at yourself and say, if you love yourself. I had to go on that journey too, Tony. I remember I stopped dating. Those were all distractions. I shut down everything. And I spent 1 year in deep meditation and self searching and reflection and everything to get inside to understand who I was. And it was the best thing I ever did in my life, but it was painful. I recognized many things that was there, and I had to learn how to forgive myself, how to respect self, all of it, man. I'm telling you, that is, Tony told you guys, that is the main question. Everything, that's the foundation before you can build anything. You've got to love yourself first. If you don't love yourself, how in the world are you going to love anyone else? You know, for lack of a better word, you're bullshitting, man. You know, we have to, you got to love yourself first. So here you are, you embarked on that journey, Tony. You're excavating you, and you began to learn who you are. Um, some of those things, talk about this self-love journey because it is important that we go there. Being there, Tony, what were some of those programs, again, the programs that they tell us that were hidden that you discover on that personal journey with you that you're like, man, and you had to face it to come to that place where you can say, okay, I love you. I honestly love you. What were some of those things, man, that you had to deal with, if you will?
Well, some of the biggest programming that we deal with is back to being a people pleaser. We're told by everyone around us that we're supposed to care what other people think. And don't get me wrong, there is some element of that. You don't want to just like walk around pissing everybody off. But at the same time, if it affects what you think about yourself or how you feel about yourself, then it's probably not the right move. And so that was the biggest thing. I had to start focusing in on me and what it felt for me and what it was like for me. And if I made a decision because I was worried about what somebody else was thinking, I felt it right away. I'm like, And I still had some of those. It took time. It still takes time. Every once in a while, those still come around. But it's really it's taking that extra time when you have a decision to make. And if it's something that could affect you or somebody else, it's taking that extra time. Don't just jump into a response, jump into an answer. Take a little bit of time and say, is this serving me and is this serving somebody else? And if it's neither, it's an immediate no. And if it's serving one of the two of you, then you need to weigh which one it's serving the best. And are you going to lose a part of yourself because of it?
Yeah. That
So
is
really,
awesome, guys.
that's got to be probably the biggest one as far as the programming. I mean, we're taught through our whole lives to be people pleasers.
Yeah. Because that's how that's the one in the programming, one in the default programming. And I tell people that we have this example when, we sit in the plane, Tony, and they say, if anything happens in the oxygen mask, you have to put it on, they have to tell you to put it on yourself first before you put it on the kids. Because most people they understand that we are programmed to put it on the kids first, not understanding that, wait a minute, if I can't see, if I can't breathe, the kid's going to die. So once we learn how to put the mask on first, is what Tony's talking about, looking at ourselves, then we will be able to help others from the outside because we are able to see, we are able to breathe, we are able to think, our understanding is clearer, we now can manage a relationship. But if we are, we can't breathe and we can't see anything, how in the world are you going to be able to save the kids? So here you are, you discovered what you needed to, Tony, and now you have to pursue your training, if you will. Once you have acquired your training, and you're now going to step into the position, if you will, as the coach, if you will, the guide. Talk to me about that transition, because that is an interesting piece. Because again, as you said, you have to deal with this thing that is called, the imposter syndrome part of you, because you now have to be looking at yourself differently. That transition, Tony, how did you make it? And what tools did you bring to help you make that?
So there's really not a whole lot of tools aside from this. And this is something that one of my early on coaches taught me and has been repeated to me several times throughout these years, which I share, is when you want to get good at something, whether it's coaching, business, entrepreneurship, whatever that is for you, but relationships, it takes 1, commitment, and 2, practice. You have to commit to wanting to be good at that, wanting to be better at that, and you have to practice. You have to make the choice. Well, I'm sorry, 3 things. 1, you have to make the choice. 2, you make the commitment. And 3, practice. And, a lot of people, there's that old phrase, practice makes perfect. Well, no, practice doesn't make perfect.
It gets you started, not make you perfect.
Practice does make you better. And, they say to become an expert in something, you need to practice 10,000 hours. Well, I don't know if that's true or not, but I do know you need to do it a lot. And so those are the biggest things. And for me, it was just practice. When I started coaching, I was either coaching for free or very low fees, at the time, because I was just trying to practice. And I still had a little bit of that imposter syndrome. And as it moved on and I started seeing people's results, I was like, wow, I'm really getting better at this. I'm really getting good at this. I had my previous coach, Steve, he pulled up an old video of me from when we first started. We first started working together in 2019. He pulled up an old video of like a live on Facebook, and he's like, "Hey, look at this guy. Now look at you today." I'm like, "Holy moly, that is talk about night and day."
Isn't that awesome, man? It's good to look back. I think it encourages you. And as we said in the onset, when you find yourself, if you will, that gift that you excel in, the learning aspect, it all begins to ignite you. It makes you stronger. So as you began to incorporate all these tools you're practicing and so forth, Tony, when did you begin to start putting your own stamp on it, if you will, to create that space by which you are now going to assist others to create miracles, if you will, in their life, to make that switch from that programming that they had that caused them to have a certain perspective and belief system on whatever it is. When you started to have that conversation to create that miracle, which is switching their perception from one perception to another. How did you begin to find, because we all find our little niche, if you will, how did you begin to start noticing it and then start putting it together, if you will, so that you can help them to create that miracle?
So mine was actually mine really, the big shift happened because of a dream I had. Little backstory. When I was 17 years old, I did an exchange program to Germany for a month where I spent a month over there and an exchange partner spent a month over here in the States. And while I was over there, my last name is Schmaltz. And while I was over there, all the guys started calling me Schmaltzy, Schmaltzy. And I just thought it was a play on my last name. I had no idea what they were talking about.
Yeah.
And so fast forward another year, my host brother over there, Marcus, came back and spent the summer back in the States again with me. And we were just taking a road trip and he started calling me Schmaltzy again. And I said, what? You keep calling me Schmaltzy. What does that mean? He's like, you don't know? I thought you knew the whole time. I said, no. What was that? He said, well, because when you were over there, you were flirting and hitting on all the girls and you had the cheesiest pickup lines ever. So he explained to me that the term Schmaltzy in German means to be overly sappy or cheesy, like a joke is cheesy. And I was like, at 18 years old, I was offended. I'm like, what? I'm like, that's BS. Well, fast forward now to 2021. And I don't remember the exact date, but I know it was August of 2021. I've been coaching for a while now. And like you said, I was trying to find out what separates me from every other coaches out there. And so one night I had a dream about that time where he explained to me what Schmaltzy meant. And I woke up and I said, that's it. That is me in a nutshell. And Schmaltz is I am happy, I am cheesy, I'm in your face. That's who I want. That's the real me. I'm like, so ever since then, I've owned the nickname Schmaltzy. And I actually assign Schmaltzy tasks to people each and every session. So
that is awesome.
It's really where
I love it, man. I love the story because that dream, again, it comes from the subconscious world. And it is who we are. And we are trying to communicate with us all day long, all night sometimes when we get quiet, then that message is able to seep in to the realm of the natural through a dream, through visions, things like that. And then we are able to act on it and implement it. So here you are, you got this dream. And I love it with your trademark, your branding, if you will. And you got your branding and you began to, utilize it. Because you mentioned it on the onset that you saw some, but when you have put your things together and you have it more in tune, if you will, your radio is in tune, because I remember having those radios back in the day. I'm dating myself, Tony, that you have to tune in and then you listen to it when you get it right. When you did that, what did you started to see? Because that transition becomes even faster, if you will. Why? Because you have learned a couple of things. And I tell people that your coach or your guide have to locate you, and they do that by the questions that they ask.
Yes.
And I give them a story about Jesus, Tony, because I grew up in a church and I was a pastor, and so I'm familiar with the book. Jesus is walking. There's this man. He's at the pool of Bethesda. There are hundreds of people there, sick and palsied, just waiting for the angel to touch this water. And Jesus walks up to this man and looks at him and he inquires about him. And then he goes to the man and he asks him this question. Do you want to be healed? You find out that the man has been there for 38 years. So people are in their stuff, if you will, for a long time. This man was in his stuff for a long time, 38 years. Jesus asked him a question because you got to locate him. He says, do you want to be healed? And the man said, yeah, every time I'm trying to get to the water, someone else always beats me to it. And Jesus located him. Why? Because Jesus wanted to find out. Was he complacent? Was he okay where he was? Was he satisfied? And when Jesus found out that he wasn't satisfied, that the man says, while I was trying to crawl to it, he's not satisfied. So he is not, he wants that healing. And Jesus looked at him and says, get up. And that's what a coach does.
Yes.
Will see you, locate you, and then they will get up. And once you are located, they know where you're at, and your progression will happen faster than it will ever be put together by yourself, because they know exactly where you're at and they know how to get you up, if you will. But you still have to, in the getting up, the man still had to use his own strength to begin to move on his own. So you have to participate in that getting up, if you will. So Tony, you began to see those things. What did you notice, man, when you locate them and invite us to one of those transitions that you get a chance and the privilege and the honor to see? Well, bring us there so we can reflect with you in one of those transitions. What happened to them? We know what happened to you, but what happened to that individual?
This is one of my favorite stories that I love to share. One of my previous clients, Angie, she was the most introverted person you'd probably ever met.
Yeah.
She's been told that her whole life. You're shy, you're quiet, you're this, and she's been programmed to think that she's shy and know that she's shy and quiet and reserved and introverted. And so when we started working together, we got down to where that started, and it did start in her childhood. And we started to work on that by asking through the questions. Well, back to my Schmaltz tasks that I was talking about, I started giving her these tasks, and she kind of half-assed them the first couple of tasks. The third one I gave her was her wake-up call, was her aha moment. So she was running a network marketing company, an MLM, and she really wanted to make that happen. She really liked the product. She liked the business model. She wanted to do that, but she wasn't getting any sales because she was so quiet, shy, introverted. Well, the task I gave her, I said, I want you to go into a department store or any kind of store you would normally visit, and I want you to ask for some ridiculous discount, like 50, 75% off, something just outrageous. And she said, why? I said, why not? Just do it. You have to ask.
Yeah.
The answer's always no unless you ask.
Yeah.
So she has her daughter record as she walks into this like coffee and donut shop. She's like has a big family get together at her house. So she's getting like 3 or 4 dozen donuts plus a bunch of coffees and everything. And her daughter's recording her, and she gets up there, and you can see she's still kind of hesitant and shy. But she asks the guy, she's like, how about 75% off today? And the guy looks at her funny and says, why? And she says, why not? It just sounds like a good day for a discount. And he hesitated for a moment and said, absolutely, you're right. It is a good day for a discount. And he gave it to her. And from that day forward, that woman went from introverted to the most courageous, confident woman you've ever seen. And she just like grew her business. Like within the next 30 or 60 days, she was like full-time income. She was just crushing it. And if you were to look at that woman today, it is not the same person as when we started working together. It is unbelievable to see the transition that has happened.
That is a powerful story. And the reason why I asked that question, Tony, is because I know you would have gone into the way that you do things. Because I want those that are listening to us to see your approach to things, so that when you guys get them, because I'm going to provide everything for you to get into Tony's space, and you need to get into his space because he is going to assist you in creating miracles. The thing is about miracles is that something that you didn't expect, but it's there. It's just waiting for you to be able to access it. And that is, as he said, this woman, he was trying to let her see that there's miracles all just waiting. And she accessed it one day when she got enough nerve. Fearfulness is one of the things that keeps us in bondage. Tony's going to help you how to get past that. That is the key. Once you get past that, she filmed it, she recorded it, she made that, she was scared. You're going to be terrified. Trust me, you're going to be terrified. But when she did it, she saw results instantly, changed her life. And I wanted you guys to see. And that's why I asked him that question. So we're going to provide everything for you guys, all of Tony's links, man, because you need to get there, because you could see it in his, the passion that is in his face and his heart when he have this conversation, so that you guys can become that next, as they say. I was interviewing this guy, this young buck, and he said, you got to learn how to level up. And so Tony's going to teach you how to level up, and it's in you. It's just courage. You need to trust yourself, and he'll help you learn how to trust yourself to be able to ask the question. Tony, is there anything else you want to share with the audience that you feel is on you? The floor is yours, man. You have it. And again, we're going to provide everything so that you guys can have access. He's also a speaker and stuff like that. So get in touch with him, man. Okay, go ahead. The floor is yours, Tony.
Yeah. So the last thing I really want to share with everybody is actually a quote from a movie. It's Yoda, where he says, "Do or do not. There is no try." And
Yeah.
the reason why it is something that I actively eliminate from my vocabulary is the word try. And I try to help other people eliminate it, because there is no such thing. You are either doing something or you are not doing something. When you say to somebody, like somebody invites you over for dinner and you say, "Oh, I'm going to try to make it." Well, you didn't really commit. And now this person says that, "Oh, this person's not somebody who commits to things. They have a lack of integrity," and you gave yourself an out. Well, don't give yourself an out. Remember, we talked earlier, it takes a choice, practice, and commitment to really get great at something. So do not use the word try. Say, I will do this. I am going to do this. I commit to doing this. And get that word try out of your dictionary, because there is no such thing.
I agree with Tony 100%. One of the greatest branding ever done on this planet, Nike. Just do it.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's one of the greatest advice that Tony has relayed to you guys. Just take try out of your vocabulary and you will see the changes in your life. Commit and make your decision, because I tell you, you are circular in your life because you haven't decided yet. You're just thinking about it. Yeah. Tony, I want to thank you so much, man, for coming to Threads of Enlightenment. And I look forward to chatting with you even more and getting some insights as to how we approach this life. And so thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me today.
You know,